Hello and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. In today's video, we are looking at Fuji Oolong from Postcard Teas, and this is a oolong made from the Qing Xin cultivar, originally from Taiwan but grown in Japan. For some viewers, this will be familiar packaging at the very least, because I was so taken by the design of this packaging when I first bought it, that with Postcard Tea's very kind permission, I took a photograph of the packaging and put it up on the community page. I made a post about it. And what I'm going to do, although we're going to be taking a much closer look at the relevant part of the video, I am going to take a look at what's inside, because I really do like the packaging here. So we have a box that gives you that strong postcard theme. And then inside we have the tea envelope with a miniature version of the design there, and then a cloth tea bag provided as well. So we're going to be looking at this up close and personal next, and then we're going to look at the tea inside, and then we are going to review it in our usual way. See you soon. We are looking at the external packaging for Fuji Oolong from Postcard Teas. Hopefully you can get some sense of the rather splendid design of this front picture, and also the colour scheme, which is rather lovely as well. I'm just going to turn this over and you can see why this is called Postcard Teas, because in a rather lovely way, some more information about the tea is provided on the back on a sticker that gives you that initial impression of this being a postcard. So now we're going to take a look at the internal packaging as well. So this is the internal packaging for Postcard Tea's Fuji Oolong. Obviously we're incredibly zoomed out, but that's just wanted to show you the packaging and the cloth envelope, cloth tea bag that comes with it. So now we're going to zoom in slightly. We can zoom right in now, and you'll find, let me just move that up, and we can probably zoom in a touch more. There we go. We have a replication on the left-hand side of the artwork on the outside, and on the inside here, it's actually more visible through the camera. Fuji Oolong, Mount Fuji, Shizuoka, Japan, best before June 2027. For information, go to postcardteas.com. Splendid packaging. Now let's move on to look at the tea. Here we are looking at the tea leaves for our Fuji Oolong from Postcard Teas. You'll note that this is not a bold oolong whatsoever. In fact, I'm wondering, my initial thought was, looking at this tea material, I'm just going to spread it out a little, whether this was twisted, but it actually, I'm starting to wonder whether this has undergone a steaming process to kill green it, in which case you might get a sort of breakdown of the leaf material. I'll do my best to clarify that, although depending on the flavour profile, that might give us some clue as to what has happened as well. Let's still call these leaves. They're coming in at about 2 millimeters wide. The smell is muted. It's slightly vegetal and slightly sweet. Almost exclusively a very, very, very dark green, and if you don't have enough light, you'd be forgiven for thinking these leaves were almost dark brown, but let's say it's a kind of forest green. As you said, you can probably tell, I'm going to move this slightly, and you might be able to see some of the fragmentary material just along here. It's that kind of thing that's making me wonder whether this has undergone the steaming process, but I will do my best to find out, and I'll put that in the description box if I can find out one way or the other. Anyway, let's move on to our reviews. Hello and welcome to the next part of our video, which is going to be our teapot style review of our Fuji Oolong from Postcard Teas, and it's from Japan, made using the Qing Xin cultivar. I confess this tea has got me very intrigued and very nervous at the same time. On the one hand, with the sort of fragmentary nature of the leaves, I really wanted to make sure we didn't oversteep it, but there's a fantastic aroma coming from the tea. which is at once very familiar. Hello. Hello and welcome to the next part of our video, which is our Western / Teapot / Kyushu style review of our tea, Fuji Oolong from Postcard Teas, in our Qing Xin Abroad mini-series, and this is a tea from Japan. The processing of the tea, as hopefully was apparent from the previous part of the video, I would guess the tea has been steamed for the Kilgreen process. And some of that has definitely come across in the aroma of the tea. There's a very powerful creaminess, which is making me think Qing Xin, and it's slightly sweet. On the other hand, there's a potent kind of savory quality, which I'm wondering is an aftermath of that steaming processing. With that in mind, I'm relieved that the brewing parameters recommended by Postcard Teas made for a slightly higher tea to water ratio, but a lower temperature. So it's 3 grams of tea for 250 mils, but the water's now at 90. I also, because of the small, not particulate, but the small size of the leaf particles, the leaf fragments, I brought the steeping time down as well to 2.5 minutes. So just to begin with the color of the tea, let's put them side by side. I would say the 1 minute, the first steeping is slightly more yellow, but I wouldn't say it's actually more intense. It's more a color difference rather than an intensity. The second steeping was also for 2.5 minutes. Let's go to the aroma. There is something slightly savory that makes me think Japanese green tea. But there's a lot of creaminess, loads of creaminess. So it's savory and creamy, but it doesn't have a kind of vegetal note, interestingly, unlike the what was it from? The Yunnan Jade Oolong, where there was a lot of spring greens even on the aroma. On the second steeping, more sweet, I would say. Not picking up the cream. All right, let's see what these are like on the flavour. I'm going to just move that across so it has time to cool down. Yeah, creaminess, some savouriness, and a little bit of vegetal now. Maybe because it's cooler. Very drying. But it doesn't taste oversteeped. There's creaminess, a bit of sweetness coming in at the end. Some savouriness, but quite gentle on that. I was expecting more of a sort of frontal assault of umami, but no. So let's try the same again with the second steep, because that was definitely more sweet on the nose. On the cup, sweet and savoury. The creaminess there is more on the smoothness of it, the body. Hasn't dropped in body, dropped in intensity of flavour. Still a bit of savoury. Not the sweet I thought, but that's dropping off more. So I think the majority of the flavour, at least in terms of intensity, has come through on the first steep. The cream is there almost like the taste, whereas in the second steeping it's there on the body. But there's definitely something savoury. Not even truly vegetal, just savoury. And I think it is the processing that's done that. But it works very well together. And if there was a steeping that brought some creamy body in smoothness into that first one, or added the creamy taste into the second one, you'd have something ideal. In fact, we're going to do something that I wouldn't normally do. We're going to take a little bit of both. Rather than complaining. So that's sweet and creamy. Yeah. It's smooth, got a good body. It's creamy on the taste. It's toned down the savouriness. And because of that, there is something there in the background. I'm not getting the florals. The flavour notes did suggest that, but there's a herbal quality. Yeah, that was a good idea. So we've got something herbal, but it's kind of tucked in behind all that cream, of which there's a lot. That's definitely come from the Qing Xin. But there's a lot of savoury there as well, and that's maybe hiding it as well. Now, I would be curious, I'm not entirely sure how well this tea will respond to a Gongfu session. That's not a slight on the tea, but I've found in my experience that Gongfu hasn't always been kind to Japanese oolongs. Nonetheless, without making any prejudgments, we're going to give it a try. Very, very short steepings. And we'll maybe just a handful of very short steepings and see what we can draw from this tea. So let's move on to that now. Hello and welcome to the final part of our video, our Gongfu session to review Fuji Oolong from Postcard Teas, which is a Qing Xin cultivar based oolong from Japan. Now, I very much enjoyed the creaminess from this tea, and I also welcomed the fact that there wasn't too much of the savouriness that I often find a bit off-putting in Japanese tea, especially green teas. However, I suspect that this tea may be a little resilient to a Gongfu session, but that's not in any way a reflection on the tea. It's simply the nature of these things, especially when the tea is so fragmentary. So what we're going to do is, following on, in a sense, the parameters from Postcard Teas, the water's still at 90. I'm going to use slightly more tea than I would normally do. So this is 3.5 grams per 50 ml steeping, and we will keep these steepings short, even if that means that we have rather more than we might otherwise expect. And to that end, I've definitely got my wastewater jug over here. So maybe just 20 seconds at a time, to be honest. $20 or $30 anyway, we'll see where we go. This is where you definitely need the fine mesh strainer, because a lot of this will slip out of the gaiwan. Right, 25. Oh, I say that. That's pretty polite. So that was 25. Yeah. Okay. Now that's funny because the creaminess and the savouriness are there already. Wow. That was definitely, in fact, there's a lot of that in the air, a lot of that vegetal note. Wow, the savouriness, that saline, savoury quality. Absolute masters. In fact, for those in the know, this is so savoury, you might think it was genmai cha, that toasted rice quality, but with creaminess. The colour is greeny yellow, very intense already. Okay. I think 20 seconds was, 25 seconds may already be too much, but you wouldn't want to be doing more. Just hugely savory. I'm hoping there's some cream in there. There is on the body. Flavor dropping off slightly. Hasn't oversteeped. Creamy, savory. Okay. I think we'll stick to 25 again. Some of the tea is on the lid, so please just bear with me. Some of that is still pretty unfurled. So and a lot of it is stuck to the sides, just because it's so small. The pieces are so small. I'm not sure whether to do 20 this time. Now that it's on, that it will have steeped slightly. In fact, we will. Let's just do 20. I'm going to use the strainer, which I should have used, just to keep it out of the cup. All right. This is why Gongfu isn't a good idea with Japanese teas. Yeah, there's more sweetness on the cup this time. And again, there's a creaminess. That's really inviting. I didn't really have time to look at the colour. In fact, now I'll show you the colour. Now that I've strained the leaf material out. There you go. It's picking up particulates, so it's opaque. There's more green to it this time. Yes, sweet and creamy and savoury. I would say in the order. Ooh. Yeah, that was overdone. Even 20 seconds. Wow. I can see when they talk about herbal quality, that really that's what's coming. Right. One last try. That's really heavy. Can't give that more than 10 seconds. But I will not be put off. 10. That's a little less intense. But wow, yeah, that was just overdone. There's a lovely greeny element to that. Still greeny yellow, but the cream is strongly there. It's got back to that kind of roasted, toasted rice note. That's better. Yeah, that's what's come through. Let's hope we've recovered from that. Nope. I will put this up just as an example of what not to do. Now, it's just not doable. It's just going straight to drying and massive amounts of tannins already. But as I say, they're not really designed for Gongfu, especially in that fragmentary nature. My goodness. Which is a shame, because I think if you had this tea more as a whole leaf, I think you'd be getting something really interesting. But then again, it wouldn't have that saline umami quality, which does go very well with the creaminess. So the moral of the story is, don't do a Gongfu session for this tea. Just don't, okay? So when it comes to the description box, as I did for a previous tea, when it's got Brewing Parameters Gongfu, and it's going to put no, nope, just don't. Very interesting. I like the savouriness, working with the creaminess, working with the sweetness. Didn't get the florals. Did get the herbal quality coming in at the end. Okay, definitely want to keep at Western or Teapot or Kyushu style, and maybe drop the time as well. Maybe keep those at shorter steepings and do it that way. Okay, very interesting. So, I've learned a lot from that. That tea is really intriguing. I want to go back to it. The other thing I've learned is, for those who've seen it, there's a video on this channel, Fuji Oolong from Nano Ocean, the standout feature of which was, or is, that despite being Japanese, grown in Japan, produced in Japan from a Japanese cultivar, you could easily think it was Taiwanese. And I think that's to do with sweetness, fruitiness, the 3 Fs. This shows you how radically different a tea can be. Same process, same, how can I put this? The same intention of producing an oolong, but some of the processing steps are so very different that they produce something totally different. And even the Western, I think, style, I think teapot style, I think shorter steeps might bring out something more. That might be something for another video. However, very interesting and very enjoyable, apart from the Gongfu, and I hope you've learned something as well. Happy steeping, and God bless.